Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Abington Heights School Board meeting for Wednesday, March 20th. Would everyone please rise and pledge the flag? May we please have roll call?
Mr. Abdullah?
Here.
Mr. Azar?
Here.
Mrs. Henderson?
Here.
Mrs. Hillebrand?
Here.
Mrs. Karam?
Here.
Mr. Moran?
Here.
Mr. Robeson?
Here.
Mrs. Tierney?
Here.
Mr. Acker?
Here.
All present.
May I please have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Abdullah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hillebrand?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
May we please have a motion to approve the meeting minutes of the meeting of February 7th, 2024?
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hillebrand?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdullah?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Okay, we're going to pivot a little bit and ask our student representatives to talk now. So, Mr. Lim and Mr. McFadden, I'm never sure who's going first. That sounds like you're not sure either.
So, for academic updates here at the high school, course recommendations by teachers close on Monday, March 18th. The course review and decline forms are also available on our district website. Students will begin to make selections for next year courses on March 20th. As for co-curricular activities, students are preparing for the Math Festival at Clark Summit Elementary for students in grades 1st through 4th on April 4th from 5 to 8 p.m. The Science Olympiad team placed 8th at their most recent competition. The robotics team recently won the Judges Award at the Hatboro-Horsham district event, and they also finished 4th in the elimination tournament last weekend. For parents, local scholarships for the Reflections program are available now in the guidance office. All applications are due by March 22nd. Final payments for all AP exams are due April 19th. Sophomore parents, Tomorrow Leaders Today is now accepting applications. The deadline to apply is Friday, March 29th. An 8th grade Parents' Night at the high school is from 6:30 to 8 p.m. on March 26th. Thank you.
All right, and today is an exciting one. We have the full 2023-2024 Winter Athletics recap. And it's certainly been an exciting season here at Abington Heights. We'd like to recap this amazing season and all the accomplishments that our teams have had. With boys basketball, they finished 26-1. The team secured an undefeated regular season, added on a 5A District 2 title, and a state's playoff run that ended in a hard-fought loss in the state quarterfinals. Will Marion, Ryan Nealon, Mason Fedor, and Robbie Lucas all earned first-team Lackawanna League Coaches All-Stars. Fedor earned first-team All-Defense for the Lackawanna League as well. Marion and Fedor were both named Co-Players of the Year for the Lackawanna League. In girls basketball, they finished 20-8. The team earned a runner-up in the 5A District 2 tournament and earned a berth in the PIAA state playoffs. The Lady Comets were led by all Lackawanna League selections, Maggie Coleman, and honorable mentions include Emily McDonald, Madison Zaleski, and Peyton Houlihan. This team ended their season with a tough loss at the hands of Bethlehem Catholic in the state 5A quarterfinals. McDonald, Zaleski, and Houlihan all earned spots to represent Abington Heights at the Senior All-Star Game. With swimming and diving, several swimmers and divers qualified for the 2024 PIAA State Championships at Bucknell University on March 12th through 14th. Jason Casper, Derek Williams, Judah Donnelly, and Jackson Wentz represented our school in the 400-yard free relay, while Casper also competed in the 100 fly and the 200 free. Williams qualified for the 50 free competition, while Giovacchino represented the girls' swim team in the 100-yard freestyle. Ethan Horitz and Veronica Matthews qualified for the diving championships and both represented AH very well. Horitz medaled, finishing 7th overall with a score of 389.1, while Veronica Matthews placed 15th among the girls divers statewide. She finished with a total points of 328.75. Wrestling finished 13-4. The team saw great individual success throughout the season, with Austin Smith, Brian Hurd, and Caleb Marzolino earning their 100th career wins. Smith became the first Comet to win 4 individual 3A District 2 titles. He capped his career off by being a 4-time 3A state qualifier as well. Hurd earned a District 2 3A individual and a 3A Northeast regional title, and then placed 5th at the state tournament. Freshman Mason Whitney had a successful year as well. He earned 2nd place in the AAA District 2 tournament, 4th place at the 3A Northeast Regional Tournament, and a 7th place medal at states. With Unified Bocce, our team White won the Northeast League Championship, and Team Blue placed 2nd. Both teams finished 4-2 overall in the regular season. At the regional championship, the team defeated Kutztown 10-4, lost 12-1 to East Stroudsburg South, and won 9-3 over Governor Mifflin to win 3rd place. With indoor track, this season our girls' track team had some state qualifiers as the 4x800 meter relay. The members of this relay included Emma Horsley, Anna Puchalowski, Reese Morgan, and Mary Grace Sabatini. They competed at the Penn State University's PTFCA State Indoor Track Championship with a time of 9 minutes, 53 seconds, and they placed 14th overall. In the week prior, this team ran a time of 9 minutes 42 seconds, qualifying them for nationals and Penn relays. And with spring sports, our teams have been selected and are getting started with the competitions and practices. But Mother Nature has decided to delay us somewhat this week. We are hoping to be back out in full force with competitions and practices next week. Thank you.
Thank you very much, that's great. Dr. Schaefer, I'm sorry, we have board reports next. Mrs. Henderson?
I have our curriculum committee meeting report from February 7th. And I just want to take a minute to say, over the last few months, we've had a very heavy focus on different proposals for our facilities. And at our last meeting, Mrs. Tierney made a very good and thought-provoking comment regarding the importance of balancing investments in academics with the proposed investments in extracurriculars in sports. So as I took time to prepare the curriculum committee report that I'm going to be presenting in a few minutes, I went through and just kind of took a second look at what investments and enhancements have been made since January of 2022. And these investments that I'm going to speak about were on top of the everyday things, investments that we do just by the byproduct of educating children. Since January of 2022, we've invested over $1 million in supplemental and curricular programs. I'll insert those as I run through the report. One of the things that we covered in our curriculum committee meeting was the course selection guide for next school year. Some of the updates include we modified some of these several math classes and science classes. Modified music. One of the biggest changes is that honors choir and honors orchestra will have to audition each year. Jazz no longer has to audition. Some of the courses that were omitted for now, they can always go back and review them in the future, is the computer integrated manufacturing class and digital electronics. Added to the course selection guide was a media production class. This was in response to the popularity and success of the media studies class. There will be CrossFit as a PE class. This class will take place in the fitness room that we invested over $96,000 in this past summer. We I keep saying we, Mrs. Tioni and her team, administrative team, created 3 new intern work experience electives. They're going to be in the athletic department intern work experience, elementary education intern work experience, and instructional technology intern work experience. We also discussed the academic calendar for the 24-25 school year. The biggest change there is that we will have 4 scheduled 2-hour delays. One will be in September, November, February, and March. This will be allowed time for teachers to review and discuss data. I would like to give Dr. Patali a shout out because one of those 2-hour delays is the Monday after Super Bowl. I dropped my daughter off this year and it was just like a scene from The Walking Dead. It was just kids, zombies walking into the building. So now they'll get a little extra shut-eye the day after the Super Bowl. And there will be a longer winter break. We're going to be approving the academic calendar at our next meeting. Today, right, yes.
The 23, 24 will be at the next meeting.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Figure that out.
The next thing we spoke about is our comprehensive plan. For that, we're focusing on goals, strategies, and intervention in the areas of math, science, and school climate. Just to highlight a few investments before moving on to the comprehensive plan. Prior to some of the board members being here and with the previous administration, they hired Dr. Pryl to be a teacher on a special assignment. She spearheaded the ELA guiding committee, which rewrote a comprehensive curriculum for each grade level in ELA. Another investment was the iReady academic diagnostic, which was just over $31,000 investment. Linkit is another student data warehouse for assessments and curriculum. The cost of that investment is $35,000. We've invested over $37,000 for student Chromebooks and also added a 0.5 gifted support teacher for $30,000 a year. So as we look at our comprehensive plan, goal number 1 is the math curriculum development and implementation. During the 22-23 school year, we followed the same model that we did with Dr. Pryl when we did ELA. Mr. Preachy was the teacher on special assignment. He led the math guiding committee. That committee determined that our current math programs met expectations, but professional development was needed in our math departments. So with that, the board approved $218,000 to invest in OGAP. That coaching has been done this year and it will continue next year. And that's one of the things that will be a focus of the professional development in the 24-25 school year. Poor Mr. Abdella's looking to see if I'm almost done.
A lot.
Lots of good stuff here. Comprehensive goal number 2, science curriculum writing. Now, while we did have teacher on special assignment for ELA and math, we did not have that luxury this year. Dr. Vitale took the lead with this, which was a significant cost savings for the district. So I was joking earlier and said Dr. Vitale wore like a $90,000 hat. So Dr. Vitale, thank you for leading the charge with this. You've done excellent work with your committee. They completing the curriculum frameworks for grades 1 through 5. They piloted a couple different math or science programs, and they chose Amplify. That's going to be a $290,000 investment, which basically, if you break it down over 6 years, this includes all of the resources. It comes out to be a little over $38 per student with the average of 250 students per grade. This includes 3 to 4 units per grade with hands-on learning, digital licenses for teachers and students, student notebooks, and 4 days of professional development for the teachers. They've also completed, they're working on grades 6 through 12, revamping the STEMs, and 5 through 8, revamping writing, looking at a tracking model for science. There will need to be some updated resources since they've not been replaced in some time, but that cost is to be determined. Comprehensive goal number 3, school climate, a personal favorite of mine as a former school counselor. The school guidance committee finalized chapter 339, our guidance plan. We'll be voting on that tonight. That included developing a plan, a mission statement for guidance, calendars for lessons and services, guidance service action plans, a comprehensive list of external resources, career guidance, service goals, guidance service activities, and an outline of consultations with the MTSS teams. One thing that our district is adding is a Project Safe and Smart Choice, but that's going to be done by the Children's Advocacy Center. It is an evidence-based child sexual abuse prevention education for grades K through 3. They'll be doing that by using developmentally appropriate language and activities about body safety and what students can do if they or someone they know feels unsafe. Before these lessons are taught in the classroom, there will be parent meetings. It's a course, Smarter Parents, Safer Kids. They're going to hold 2 different ones, one from 9 to 11 on April 2nd, and we'll have one in the evening on April 8th from 6 to 8. And I just want to take a minute to say this is something that has been done in schools for decades. So I'm happy that this is something that Abington Heights is taking on. I think it's critical that we teach our children boundaries and, identifying support systems and what to do, if they or someone they know needs help. All right, I'm almost done. PBIS, we're continuing the implementation at the elementary and middle school levels. There will be a significant focus on PBIS next year during the professional development days. Surveys were completed by all of the students in November and March. Parents are always given the option to opt out of these surveys. So over the last 26 months, we have enhanced the school climate by adding a principal, guidance counselor, and medical professional in every building for a cost investment of $150,000 per year. This allows for presence, availability, interventions to be done with fidelity and so that they can effectively do their jobs. We've also added the position of Dean of Students, which is a $90,000 a year investment. We've also made enhancements with safety and climate, because I personally feel that safety and climate kind of go hand in hand. We've invested just over $174,000 in the elementary schools, Waverly, South Abington, CSE, and Newton Ransom for surveillance. We've invested over $17,000 for the Raptor system, and we've secured grants for new communication systems for $96,000, school resource officer grant for $75,000 at the middle school campus, and video surveillance at the high school and middle school for $120,000. The fourth thing that we spoke about at the curriculum committee meeting was professional development agenda. That's just mainly what's going to be focused on next year. We also came up with an artificial intelligence expectations plan. I feel that Abington Heights is staying ahead of the curve on this one. We're one of the few school districts, to my knowledge, in the area that has developed and implemented a plan. We created a committee that was comprised of students, teachers, and parents that kind of came up with a framework that's going to be reevaluated and make changes as they are needed. The goal of our artificial intelligence expectations is to be used as a guiding principle, and we want to offer our students the opportunity to use AI in a responsible manner without impacting our strong academic integrity. Basically, this will outline how it can be used correctly, incorrectly, and what happens if it's not used correctly. Finally, the last thing we spoke about was implementing parent workshops. We're looking to do them on a monthly basis next year. We've had a couple this year that were very successful. Dr. Vitale's going to send out a survey to the parents to see what they feel is important and what they would like to have workshops and be educated in. And one of the workshops is happening April. It's a elementary math festival at CSE on April 4th at 5 p.m. Okay. That's it.
That's a tough act to follow. I'll be brief. So thank you, Mr. Acker. The Facilities Committee did meet back on February 21st. I will say that the whole board has really focused on facilities. The last 2 work sessions that we had 2 weeks ago and 4 weeks ago on this date, the entire board really talked about facilities. But I will highlight a few of the things that happened. The first thing that happened was Mr. Abdallah and I were 2 minutes late for the meeting, and we walked into an auditorium full of softball players and coaches and parents. So they caught us off guard, but it was great to hear from them. Everybody on the board will remember a year ago the baseball parents similarly came to the board, And they were very appreciative of the work that the board did do to invest in resodding and regrading the fields, but they were very firm in their request for us to address some other general issues with the softball field, and I went through. And I'm there every day as a coach, and they're right. The facilities that the softball team has compared to the other facilities in the district, even though the field now looks great, they're just not up to the standards that we should have as a school district. Dr. Schaefer, sorry, I devoted you, Dr. Schaefer. You went to school for a long time. So Dr. Schaefer basically said to the room after their presentation,
Said no one ever.
the same thing, that it's obviously a focal point. It has been a focal point of the board. There's something on the agenda tonight that is hopefully going to help address some of those much-needed facilities issues that we have with extracurriculars. A couple of the other topics that we talked about, Dr. Schaefer mentioned that administrations is in discussions with outside consultants regarding our wastewater treatment lines and our needs at the middle school. There's something on the agenda tonight to talk about that. He also talked about the fact that the school district owns 26 vehicles and that he and administration are in the process of going through them in great detail. A lot of them are at their end of their useful lives, I will say, some beyond, and he's working with our new head of facilities in putting together a schedule to help us budget for the future, when we need to invest in and when we need to lease, when we need to buy. It's definitely something that's going to help our budgeting process. The balance of that meeting was really almost merged with the work session that happened after that, and we spent the rest of the committee meeting and the rest of the work session really talking about 4 main topics that we as a board have been talking about for a long time. 1, obviously the renovation and new construction options at the middle school. 2, how we might spread our financial resources. During those work sessions, we as a board talked about not putting all of our eggs. The consensus was clearly to spread our resources throughout all 6 of our academic buildings, which KCBA has analyzed over the last 2 years. 3rd, to pursue some outdoor field renovations and improvements at the high school. These are, of course, as we've all talked about, are lowest on the list of the priorities that we have, but they're the ones that are shovel-ready and can be done right now while we are engaging firms to do the design work for everything that we're talking about within our buildings. And then 4th, evaluating some strategic alternatives as it relates to this building and looking at some options there. So that was it. Thank you.
Mr. Azar, thank you very much for a concise report. You boiled down a lot of work into a great report. Mrs. Karam.
The Finance Committee met on March 6th, and I will be even briefer. Mostly, the committee had clarifications and follow-ups built on discussions had at our last meeting and the last 2 work sessions, similar to Rod with the Finance Committee. David Payne from PNC Capital Markets attended and answered board members' questions on the specifics of our bond issuance. For example, draw schedules, updated interest rates, terms, and so on, related to our schedule for design and building proposals by KCBA. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other board reports at this time? Mrs. Terry.
Just the AEIO. They had their March meeting on Friday, and fortunately, the mock trial has won their district final, and they're headed to the state. So they've requested some strong funds, so the AEIO is supporting their travels. Also, the FBLA did the same. They made it to their state leadership, which is going to be in Harrisburg, and they've requested some funds, so the AEIO is going to fund their opportunity to compete in Harrisburg. And also, a great opportunity for our second-level chemistry course and life skills. It's called Science of Ice Cream. The AEIO is purchasing an ice cream machine for both life skills class and the chemistry classes to make ice cream and sell ice cream as a fundraiser and earn some money and at the same time learn how to make ice cream. So thank you.
Thank you very much. That's great. Any other reports? Okay. Dr. Schaefer, the floor is yours.
All right. I'm going to
hand it over to Dr. Vitale in a minute here, who will be providing our mid-year goals update. You'll recall we provided a presentation at the beginning of the year where we outline our goals. We talked about that in our retreat, how we arrive at our goals, the data that we look at, the strategies that we contemplate, and all the different processes that we use. But before we start, and related to this, I've mentioned this before, but as Mr. McVetti and Mr. Lamb were talking about all the different accolades the students at the high school and the district have experienced, I was reminded by of a book the most recently read. It was Adam Grant. It's called Hidden Potential, where he asserts that it's character skills over cognition, and certainly I can make some arguments about cognition, but over and over, what we hear in the board meetings are our students put in positions where they are not only developing, but demonstrating their character skills. And the more and more I hear that, the more and more I agree with his hypothesis in the book, which can be argued, but it's something that I'm very proud of, and I know our community's proud of. And part of the goals, when we talk about the National Student Clearinghouse data and how successful our students are in post-secondary ventures, and I think about my own experiences, it really has, at least personally, everything to do with like character skills and what you did to get yourself through. And I can look at various different board members and the things that they've done and shared with me, and I think, wow, character over cognition. I look at Phil and just, graduated from Brown last year. We gave him a sweatshirt, and I've had discussions with him, and, it wasn't the cognitive load, but everything else that you had to go through as you're working, and you've got families, and these students have personal lives and academics, and then they're in Unified Bocce or FBLA, or they're coming up with an idea to have an ice cream machine and start a business, right? Or our basketball team's persevering, right? If you go to watch them, they were behind plenty enough, and they battled back, right? Same thing with the girls' basketball team and anything else. So that's top of mind to me as I turn it over to Maggie as she talks about our goals.
So it's not a mid-year update. I will update us on the mid-year goals, but we're kind of at the end of March. So we do recognize it's not a mid-year update, but we were having really important conversations about facilities and finance. So we delayed this conversation. I also recognize that it has potential to be a longer board meeting. So if it seems brief, it's not because it's not important. I would argue this is the most important thing that we do, which is why the curriculum committee debrief was the longest. But anyway, if it seems brief, it's intentional just to be respectful of your time. So just to quickly remind you, every elementary school has 3 goals. So it's based on math, ELA, and climate. And I would say that Dr. Schaefer and I set that those are the goals and those are the focus areas. So math is to be on our universal screener at 80% by the end of the year for students K to 2, which is kind of where all students need to be. So any good core program, 80% of your students are on grade level, if not more. And then 3rd and 4th grade would be PSSA data, but we don't have that yet, so there is no mid-year benchmark. It's the same for ELA. And then the climate goal is to increase the sense of belongingness by 3%. Newton Ransom has not sense of belongingness, but their perception of good behavior being recognized at school, which is kind of, they drilled down a little bit more just to say what they felt belongingness meant. South Abington and Waverly have very similar goals of math, ELA, and climate. And these are just here to kind of remind you of what we set as our goals and what we're working toward. So I have two different charts showing the same information, and there's no way to show this in an easy, succinct way. So what I did was I basically took every building, broke down where students are at right now at the mid-year benchmark. So it'll show you, so like if we look at kindergarten at Clark Summit, they grew 8.8%, meaning that students in the on grade level or above grade level grew 8.8%, and it's currently at 69.4% of the students are in that kind of band. So when you look at our universal benchmarks, there's 3 different bands. It's low risk, medium risk, and high risk. These are the students who are considered low risk. When we look at this data, we see that some grades have grown astronomically. There are a few negatives in there. And basically, at the mid-year point, I sit down with every building administrator, and we talk about kind of where we're at each grade level, why we saw such a rise or such a dip. And I mean, the negatives are not large, but there are some negatives in there. And we talk about kind of how do we reallocate resources either within the building or district-wide to make sure that we're appropriately supporting that grade level. I have the ability to kind of look at district-wide data and building level data, but they really are drilling down, and kudos to the administrators at the elementary level of strongly drilling down to the student level and knowing why said student didn't grow, and then working on a plan and an intervention plan and being super responsive to that. So these are conversations that we're constantly having about how we continue to grow our students. So that's the ELA data. Just in another form, this is the same information, but just color-coded, so you can see. I thought the first page was really important, so you could see where we were with those benchmarks, but this shows you the growth from the beginning of the year to the middle of the year for students who are considered low risk. When we look at math, it's the same information. So again, we're seeing lots of positive numbers, lots of considerable growth, and I would really attribute this to the teachers taking the professional development that we've planned of looking at formative assessments and being responsive to the formative assessments and how students are performing, and then pivoting their instruction and making solid instructional decisions based on what they're seeing from their student work and performance tasks. So the board decided last year to invest a significant amount of funds in professional development. And if we look at this chart, I really do attribute this growth to our teachers being incredibly responsive and focused on making sure that they're taking that learning into the classroom and it's translating to student growth. Same chart, just a different way of kind of showing the data. When we talk about the climate goals are really, really difficult because the reality is you're doing a quick benchmark for a student, asking them kind of how they're feeling that day. So it can waver. So the blue is the goals of where our schools want to be at, and you can kind of see that some chose good behavior is recognized and some chose the I like school answer. And this kind of shows you their growth. There is something to be said about kind of a mid-year benchmark of we're in the monotony of school and it's a long winter, and perhaps students aren't having as much fun, in quotes, as they would, but I would say none of the building principals are concerned by this data. When we look at the high school and the middle school goals, the middle school followed really the trend of the elementary schools of setting climate, math, and ELA. We do not have PSSA data. That is how they set their goal, but we do try to use those benchmarks and diagnostic assessments to gauge our student growth. The high school is just, it's a different way to look at student data. So their goals are based on academics to reduce the amount of students who are failing their major content area. Attendance is to improve daily attendance by 2%, and when you look at daily attendance as almost 92%, it's actually a fairly lofty goal to increase that by 2, because that's a lot of students that you have to move. And then climate is to increase sense of belonging, and the high school really identified that they want to increase the sense of belonging not only with their students, but with their faculty as well, and they feel that the faculty impact will obviously make an impact on students. So when we look at the middle school uses a different benchmark than the elementary school. We're working to tighten that up for next school year. However, when we look at their benchmark, this is basically the growth that we've seen from the beginning to the middle of the year. Eighth grade is a concern, but 1% isn't a huge drop, but we should see growth there. So those are conversations. The conversations that we're having when we talk about the assessment that we give, the elementary assessment is no more than 20 minutes. The middle school assessment is usually 2 or 3 periods, and we're seeing a fatigue factor. We're seeing that students aren't necessarily not taking it super seriously, that it's an insane amount of time for them to be doing the assessment. So we're using that information of what students are reporting to us and kind of going to pivot to a new screener for next school year. I'm not saying that's why these scores are not so high, but we think that it could be a factor. The high school goals, so Dr. Schaefer keeps sending me on different rabbit hunts, I would say, on how to track this data. So I originally tracked, just in case you're looking back at old information, I originally tracked how many students received a failing grade in a course. And I tracked that data, and that had never been done, so it was so much fun, actually. Then he said, but what if it's the same kid? Like, how do we know it's not the same student failing 4 times? Are you laughing behind me? 4 or 5 times. That one student would be 5 numbers. So 4 marking periods and the end of the year, that's skewing the data. So I went back to the drawing board, and this is the number of students with failing grades on their report card. Right? So this is the original data. So this is the number of failing grades on a report card. This could be the same kid 5 times. And then I projected out where we should be at, that's the pink, and then kind of where we're at after the first semester, which is the second to last column here. The second round of data that I pulled was the number of distinct students with failing grades. And you'll see that the numbers are much different, and which honestly means that we have the same students failing, which is also concerning because we want to make sure we're catching those students in the beginning of the year and helping and supporting them more appropriately. And then this shows here what the goal is for the year, and kind of where we're at, and then my anticipated of what we're on track for if we don't do anything significant. So this is something we just keep working with. Mrs. Tioni and the department chairs are having these conversations with teachers about how we can intervene and better support our students. Middle school and high school climate goals. Middle school chose a sense of belongingness, and they have stayed about the same. And then the high school also chose a sense of belongingness. We don't have data for the teachers because we didn't do a mid-year data point, but we do have for the high school. I would say that I'm incredibly concerned because they're anonymous surveys. We ask students to do it, and we only had about 75% of the students at the middle school do it, where we typically have almost 100% at the end of the year, and then the high school had about 400 students, so they had about a quarter of their student body answer this. So I'm not super comfortable with the sampling size. Sometimes when you complete a survey for a reason, right? So I have found that sometimes people complete surveys because they're super happy, or on the other side of the spectrum, that they're disenfranchised. So I would attribute that number. As we're talking about other goals, so all of our departments set goals this year using the logic model. So I just want to kind of refresh everybody of where we're at with the other goals. So human resources, Karen Dewar came on and has really been doing an amazing job in that department. She's my favorite person for being the director of human resources. I just want to say that. Love that she's taken over that department and I don't have to do it anymore. She's worked really strongly to develop a stronger onboarding process and offboarding process, and both are super important. So she is working tirelessly on those 2 projects of just making sure that we're welcoming people appropriately, and that as they're exiting, we understand why they're leaving, the choices they're making, and how we can do better. And then she has done a great job making sure we're in compliance with the Affordable Care Act. Special education, Mrs. Bukowski continues to work feverishly on improving programming that we offer. She was working on making sure that we're using a tool to determine how we assign students personal care assistants to make sure that we are still offering the least restrictive environment. I don't know how to say the acronym, but she's working on an emotional support services program metric to really examine the current program that we offer our students and making sure that it's the best program we can, and then doing the same with our Life Skills VFAC program, of just making sure that our programs are meeting the necessary standards and meeting student needs. Student services, which is guidance, they worked, Mr. Smith did a great job restructuring with Mrs. Bukowski the school counseling social work model, and I really think there were some bumps in the road early in the year, but I think that we've really hit our stride, and we are offering students 3 levels of support. So there's a 3-tiered model now with our school counseling program. We've definitely done a great job to support trauma-informed care in our classrooms. We'll continue to work on that. He's done a great job developing resources and connections for drug and alcohol programming for students in need, because it is something in our area that is definitely underserved for children. And then working on a custom transcript in addition to the comprehensive guidance plan that you're hopefully going to approve tonight. Technology, Justin perhaps has done the most in the last 2 years of just what he has had to overcome with things from the 90s, would we agree, Mr. Robeson, of just technology that was super outdated. But perhaps it's what we see the least of. So he's done a great job updating the firewalls in the district, creating a cyclical process with the technology committee on device purchasing, and then streamlining the rostering of Google Classroom. And not to be undone, Mr. Pasco, who came on for about a year ago, has really done a great job in transportation, and his focus this year is to develop capacity within transportation, because we learned when the director of transportation, who had been here 16 years ago, when she left last year, all of that institutional memory left with her, and no one really knew how to run transportation. So he's done a great job of just making sure that there's a system in place, and it doesn't matter the human being in the office, that anybody can just go in and pick up that position and keep it running. And then he's looking at different programs that can better support transportation at kind of the logistical level in our district. And that is all. And I promised to be brief, and I wasn't, but I'm sorry, and thank you.
Okay,
Yes?
One question.
okay.
Do you remember, what is our graduation rate?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure, but it's high
Right,
90s.
Right, okay, thank you.
I would argue, it's probably 98, 99%.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? Dr. Vitale, thank you very much for a great report.
Thank you.
Okay, the next part of our meeting is the public comment. If there's anyone that'd like to make a public comment, please step forward and let us know who you are and any comments? Okay, let's move on. Dr. Schaefer, why don't we move into the action to discussion items?
Did we do the treasurer and bills?
May we have to approve the treasurer's and report and the bills. So, Mrs. Karam.
Yep. A reminder that the full report is available online, but in summary, we began the month with a cash balance of $27,393,871.41. We took in $2,642,022.80 in monthly revenue. Our net disbursements were $5,722,921.16 for February, for a cash balance of $24,312,973.05. Thank you.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion to approve the treasurer's report?
So moved.
Any questions? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hillebrand?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdullah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Dr. Schaefer.
Yeah, okay. This time I'd ask if the board would entertain combining items B through S Says a agenda joke.
But
Get done with this meeting really quick.
Actually, the
For this
NEIU does
meeting,
it pretty well.
Dr. Schaefer, I think for this meeting, F was not enough.
All right.
How long did you prep for that?
I know, this is too much. Okay, sure I'm in the right spot here. Can I have ask the board to consider a motion to approve the personnel report as presented?
So moved.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Hildebrand?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdullah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Mr. Acker, ask the board consider a motion to approve the February-March volunteer list.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdullah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hildebrand?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Mr. Acker, ask the board consider a motion to approve the February reimbursement report.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call?
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdullah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hildebrand?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Ask the board consider a motion to approve the affiliation agreement between Millersville University and Abington Heights to provide students with clinical experiences.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdullah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hildebrand?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Ask that the board consider a motion to approve the affiliation agreement between Abington Heights and Robert Morris University for internship, practicum, preclinical, and student teaching students.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion?
Is that near Pittsburgh?
Yep.
Okay.
Roll call?
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdullah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hildebrand?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Ask the board to consider a motion to approve the agreements between Scranton School District and Abington Heights.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Abdullah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hildebrand?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Mr. Acker, ask the board consider a motion to approve the Northwest Area School District placement for a student to provide tutoring services at an hourly rate of $37.25.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hildebrand?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdullah?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Mr. Acker, ask the board consider a motion to approve the disposal of outdated curricular resources, including several broken instruments throughout the district.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call?
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hildebrand?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdullah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Okay, we're at item J. For almost 2.5 years now, the Abington Heights School Board has very deliberately and strategically taken on a project to improve as many of our facilities as possible. And that started with a RFP for an architect to survey the condition of all of our facilities. And from that point, we have been engaging the community, numerous professionals and advisors, contemplating different projects and ideas in public, showing designs, going back to architects, asking for feedback and estimates. This has been a very long project in preparing for the next 7 years. As well it should be, because there's a lot at stake. At the outset and many presentations after that, I talked about Abington Heights 2050. Because when the board takes on large projects, like that of a mortgage in a home, you are investing in the long term. Except here, the board will turn over. And the next board will receive what you have provided. And every once in a while, a board is there at a time where they are creating a new cycle. Because after we start to invest in our properties, in our facilities, like our mechanicals, we know and we anticipate that they will endure for a certain period. And then somebody else, a new board, will come along, and we would hope that we have set a predictable, reliable cycle so that it will be easier for that board to handle those challenges. And that's where we are today at the start. Over the last 3 months, the board, again, has been strategic and deliberate in a very public way, having work sessions and meetings where we have spoken to our architects, our financial advisors, our bond counsel, our bond representatives and banks to provide us with the most updated information, knowing that the problem with predictability is that we forget how unpredictable it is. But we do our best with the data that we have to figure out a responsible way to address the needs of our community and schools. And that first step is looking at the first investment and the first bond, which we have in front of us today. One of most likely several if we move forward with all of the projects. So I'll read the motion and know that we have experts in front of us here that are able to address some of the questions that we may have regarding the finances and the bond questions at hand. So, Mr. Acker, I'd ask that the board consider a motion to adopt the parameters bond resolution as presented, authorizing bond issue of approximately $10 million to finance middle school, elementary schools, and athletic field improvements. And I will say, because I didn't say a second ago, that when we talk about the bond parameters, what we don't have in front of you is this will take about 60 days to effectuate, so our advisors can make sure they are obtaining the best terms for us. So what you have in front of you is parameters and not, hey, here's the interest rate. All right, it's not, it doesn't work that way.
Okay. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, on the motion. Any questions? Bella? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Hillebrand?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdullah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Our next a motion is the KCBA agreement. And I'm going to be a little redundant. Throughout this process, we've worked hand in hand with KCBA, who are our facilities team. Some 2 years ago, vetted numerous proposals, interviewed, called recommendations, and arrived at KCBA. And they have been a trusted partner, an advisor, sometimes telling us things that we didn't want to hear, sometimes confirming things that we thought. And what we have in front of you today is an agreement for KCBA to begin the design work. And I mentioned this at the last work session, is one of the designs in the agreement will be for the middle school, which will take a year. And this is a lot of, besides the permitting and all of the transactional things, it's a lot of back and forth with our teachers, with our administrators, with our board, to make sure that the design meets our expectations, right? We don't know where that light switch is going to be or where that room is going to be today, because we need to go through this really iterative cycle with that. In addition, you will find all of the elementary schools. However, we will not be engaging in construction for all of them simultaneously. What we talked about is taking advantage of economies of scale, doing the design work for the elementaries first, and then determining, hey, is there any way that we can do some of the work in order to save some money? For example, this will be a great opportunity to provide uniform mechanicals and controls, some consistency there, so that not only we can train our custodial and maintenance staff in how to repair those, but how to tend to those, versus having all sorts of different mechanicals and controls. So through this process, we hope that, for instance, we could purchase all the boilers at one time, saving money, and then putting those boilers in, say, over a summer. But what it won't mean is that we're going to have 4 elementary schools undergoing construction. One, that would be just too much. And 2, we can't do that because we need some runway to raise enough money to pay our debt service. So with that said, Mr. Ackert asks that the board consider a motion to approve the service agreement between Abington Heights School District and KCBA.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion.
I'd like to say a couple things. So I just want to say this is a big deal. I don't want to just go through this and approve it. This is a really big deal. I've been on the school board for 3.5 years, and I've been fortunate to be around 3 board members that have a lot more experience than me and have decided to stick around and run again and be a part of what we're doing today. And I want to thank all 3 of you for doing that, sincerely. It's a big deal. It is a really big deal.
I appreciate that, Rod. This is a big deal.
And we have 5 board members that came in right after I did, knowing what you were coming into, knowing how much work this would be, and knowing how much you'd have to engage in this. We've all invested an amazing amount of time over the last 2 years plus at analyzing our options, making sure we involve the community. It's just been, I'm flattered to be a part of a group of people that's as committed to doing what we do today. I also want to thank KCBA. You've done a fantastic job getting us to today and helping us to analyze these options. But sincerely and most importantly, I want to thank Dr. Schaefer. I was in the room, I'm getting choked up because this is such a big deal. I was in the room when we all talked as a board, many of whom aren't here today, and we're just as committed to hiring a great leader to get us to this day. And to a person, everybody in that room, and 4 of us are still here, said we wanted somebody to come in that could do exactly this, run this process, which is an extremely complicated process to run, bring everyone together and try to help us analyze, at the time, analyze our facilities, right? We were just starting that process. And we also wanted somebody that could come and help take what is already a fantastic school district to a whole nother level. And I'm speaking just for myself, but I can't imagine that I'm going to be disagreed with by any board members. Like, I think that you have done that, and that you have helped us do some amazing things that are just the beginning of, I believe, taking us to a whole nother level as a school district. And I'm proud to be a part of it, so I'm obviously in favor of what we're about to vote on.
Mr. Azar, thank you very much. I certainly echo your comments. I think it takes a team, and, starting with the facilities committee that you picked up, the time and effort you put into it, I think also the rest of the board all participated, and I think, I want to thank everyone, and also one unsung hero sitting in the crowd there is Mr. Mirabelli, who kept us in line and told us what we could and couldn't do it from a financial standpoint. I don't see a jetpack on your back or anything like you're ready to run away, so we hope you're going to stick around and guide us the rest of the way. But I wish to thank everyone, and again, Dr. Schaefer, excellent work. So, any other comments?
Just
Mr. Robson.
one other thing. I mean, we really took a hard look at this. And in some of the discussions, we had diversity of thought. We had challenged each other's assumptions. And now is the time to stack hands and get this thing done. So a lot of work went into this, a lot of outreach to the community, and a lot of input from community members through board members. And there's limited resources, but there's a ton of opportunity, and this is the marking of a good start to improve our facilities. So, thanks for all your hard work, Rod, on this. I know you spent a lot of time on this, and you had to deal with a lot of challenging assumptions from myself. So, but here we are, and this is a good day. So, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to add on that.
Go right ahead, Ms.
I just want to add on that. This is a great day. I've been on the board a long time, and I was skeptical of this. I don't want to use the word fearful of it, but it was a huge undertaking. So I really appreciate the new vision, the new eyes that came on board to help some of us board directors kind of give us a little bit of a nudge to say, yeah, we can do this. We can do this. And I'm really happy to be a part of this and to have stayed on with this, because this is not an easy thing. So I appreciate all the hard work. And I know there have been a lot of questions, and we kind of went back and forth a bit, but this is a great day, and I really appreciate everybody's input, and especially Dr. Schaefer for really believing in us and making us all put our heads together and making this work. So again, I appreciate everything. Thank you.
I was just going to make a comment to your comment, Phil. I think what's important is that we speak our piece, speak our mind, and we make our opinions, and I think everyone has, included you, and I think it's positive. It's all positive. So, and I think the other thing, it is a big day and it's a good day, but this is the first of many. We have a whole series of votes to go, including a few more bond issues, a few more professional contracts for work to be done. So, ladies and gentlemen, please stick around. We're going to need you.
We all going to move out of the area now?
So with that, I'd call for roll call, please.
Mrs. Karam,
Yes.
Mr. Moran,
Yes.
Mr. Robeson,
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney,
Yes.
Mr. Abdullah,
Yes.
Mr. Azar,
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Hillebrand,
Yes.
Mr. Acker,
Yes.
9-0.
Before I go on to this next one, I do want to share some information. And there's a motion here to authorize me to put together a grant for facility improvements. And again, over the last 2.5 years, the board has invested almost $2.75 million in a variety of projects that we've talked about quite publicly in the areas of academics, school safety, technology, extracurricular, and operations. And simultaneously, because that's a lot of money, $2.7 million, and what we've just talked about, embarking on the next 5 to 7 years, looking at almost $100 million. Know that we will not stop looking for funding to offset that. So in the last 2.5 years, we spent $2.7 million improving all of those areas. Look at Phil, over $500,000 in technology, because when we started 2.5 years ago, we were running Windows 2003, and we were looking for a catastrophe. But simultaneously, over that same time, we have received $3.3 million in grants. We've clamped down in some areas with operations where we've saved money, we've invested money. So while 2.7 has gone out, we've brought back 3.3. And that's exactly what this next resolution, this action item is. We will not stop continuing to look for money. So, Mr. Ackert, as a board, consider a motion to approve the authorized official grant resolution for the Public School Facility Improvement Grant.
Hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Abdullah, are you and Mr. Moran negotiating who seconds these? Okay. On the motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdullah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hildebrand?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Mr. Acker, to ensure that we'll be talking about sewage for the foreseeable future, I'd ask the board to consider a motion to approve the agreement between AHSD and Labella Associates, DPC, for an inflow and infiltration study at Abington Heights Middle School.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdullah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hildebrand?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Before I read this motion, this is, Mr. Azar talked about this before. As we're looking at these numerous projects over the next 5 to 7 years, working on all facilities, a part of our facilities are our fields, our extracurricular, and what I refer to as our community fields. Because when you take a look at the end of every board agenda, you'll see all the different community organizations that use it. And most of the time, it's kids that are anywhere from 5 to 10 years old, running around, throwing, running, kicking, just having fun at our facilities, as it should be. We want our little comets to grow up to be big comets and enjoy hearing the accolades that we heard in the beginning of this meeting. So what you have in front of you is a motion to approve the work for a new field that will be turf to the left of the current stadium where our soccer plays. This stadium would be for boys and girls soccer, boys and girls lacrosse, field hockey, girls softball. Did I miss anything? Because this is truly a field for everybody. It would have stands. There would be lights, not like the lights that you see in the stadium now. The newer lights that are more efficient spray less, so where the light's supposed to be is where it is, so it doesn't interrupt. This is approximately 5 to 6% of our entire budget. Also within here is a plan for stadium expansion. Right now, our stadium at the high school does not hold many people, can't even hold the entire student body. So this would be for expansion of an additional 1,800 seats on the home side and 500 on the visitor side. And at some point in the near future, we know that we need restroom facilities, and that's something that we're working on, and we do believe that we have some solutions there. This work would start immediately if everything went according to plan, and I stress that, if everything went according to plan, the fields would be done by December, and then in November, they would do some initial work at the stadium and then stop until the summer. That way we don't disrupt any of the facility use. And then it would be back online after the summer. I guess there's probably a lot of questions that will come up as a result, but I guess to foreshadow just a little bit, we do have another action item here where we're exploring our possibilities for this building and the 11 acres that rests on it. I mean, there isn't many of us here using this, and it wouldn't be right for me to sit here and say that I'm not looking under every rock. I have to make sure that we are leveraging every opportunity that we have to invest back into our facilities. So with that said, Mr. Acker, I'd ask that the board consider a motion to approve the budget proposal for Deluxe Athletics in Quad 3.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, on the motion?
I just
Mr. Moran.
wanted to say, thank you for Coach Kelly and Mr. Mastrioni for showing support tonight. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the girls play softball next season on this, so it's gonna be awesome.
I agree, and I think, throughout this whole process, we have talked about, we've had many decisions and many directions we could have taken, and I think one of the key elements that this board looked at wisely is providing the widest variety of options for future work, and I think that is one thing this allows us to do. So I think it's a great opportunity. Anyone else? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdallah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hildebrand?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Mr. Acker, I'd ask that the board consider a motion to approve the agreement with Rocco Vivano Esquire to provide strategic alternatives for the sale of a district property located at 200 East Grove Street.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call?
Mr. Abdallah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hildebrand?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Abstain.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
Motion carries 8 with 1 abstention.
Before I read the next item, I just wanted to provide some information. As I talked about in the beginning about, character skills over cognition, and we talked a little bit, Maggie talked actually a lot about our goals, and that's really the driving force behind everything that we do. One thing that we do take pride in is the array, the diversity of curriculum that we offer in our high school. And that means not only in our core academic subjects, but also in some of our CTC, as well as health and phys ed, which I would say is a core subject. But one thing that we were missing there is every single option for our kids to challenge them. So for instance, in phys ed, our students, under the phys ed requirement, our students can take a class, coaching fundamentals. It's not in the gym, it's in the classroom. These are for students that want to coach And we have a lot of students that coach. As I mentioned, all those junior comets and all the kids that participate and are running around on our fields, you're usually going to see some high school kids there. And you can see that in all the camps and all around in summer. We also have like lifetime sports, which I should have taken in high school. So kids could work on badminton and pickleball, and it's just as it says, lifetime sports, right? And then we have some PE courses where you can, engage in different types of basketball and other, flag football, all sorts of things like that. What we have in front of you is we're going to offer a CrossFit class where we have a teacher who is going through the certification process. And this is for students who really want to push themselves cardiovascularly, using all sorts of different fitness routines. This is for students that would select it. And I can't tell you how many kids are going to sign up for it because they're doing that right now. But what I can tell you from experience is, and what you hear every board meeting, is that our kids are engaged in extracurricular activities. Our students push themselves athletically in every way possible, and you hear it. Last week I was in the powerlifting room, working with Claude, trying to figure out some equipment and things like that. And we started to talk about, because I had the folks from Vertex here, talking about some of the athletes. And Claude started to talk about them all, and they're like, well, how many kids do you have in this club? Like, the number was like something like over 50. You wouldn't, that's my bad. I wouldn't have thought that many, but we do have that many, and they are very successful. We had a young lady going to Africa to participate in world championships. So this won't be the last time I come back to you to talk about it. This is a great thing that we're doing. We are providing for the diversity of needs of our students. And in some cases, we'll take some things away only to add new things. So at one point, we didn't have the architectural design classes, and we didn't have an architect teaching it. But now we've got kids taking that class using software that architects are using right now in the industry. And we'll continue to evolve, and that's what makes us excellent. So at this time, I'd ask that the board would consider a motion to approve the services agreement between AHSD and CrossFit Vertex.
So moved.
Second?
On the motion?
I have a comment. Dr. Schaefer said that a lot of our students are also coaches. I just want to give a shout out to the 9th period high school varsity track athletes that come out in 9th period and help us junior high coaches with hurdles and with all the running and really help out. We have 50 boys and 50 girls, and these high school student athletes really spend their special study time in helping the junior high program. So I just want to give a shout out to, we do have student athlete coaches, so thank you.
Mrs. Hildebrand?
And just one question on we're voting on the substance, but the terms are subject to
Change, correct.
slight modification.
Yes.
Should we decide?
Yes.
Roll call?
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hillebrand?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdallah?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Mr. Acker, I'd ask that the board consider a motion to approve the 2024-2025 Abington Heights academic school calendar.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion? Roll call?
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hillebrand?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdallah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Mr. Acker, I'd ask the board consider a motion to approve the 2024 through 2027 comprehensive K-12 guidance and counseling plan.
So moved?
Second.
On the motion? Mrs. Henderson?
I'll be quick this time. I just want to take a minute to thank Mr. Smith, the counselors, the administrative team, Dr. Vitale, for putting this together. While it is a requirement, I do think they put a lot of time, attention, and detail into this. You know, as an educator and a former school counselor, I think it's critical that we have things in place to support our students, staff, and even parents so that they can best support their students. So I don't think this is a matter of just checking a box. I do think that we're covering a lot of bases, you know, especially with our strategic goal number 3, improving climate. So I think a lot of things that are in this plan helps, you know, we kind of talk and walk the walk. So I think a lot of things that we have in place, you know, we want our kids coming to school, enjoying it, feeling liked, accepted, respected. And I think a lot of things that are in this plan will help our children to do that. So I just wanted to give them a shout out and say thank you.
Roll call?
Mrs. Hillebrand?
Yes.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdullah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Mr. Ackert asks that the board consider a motion to approve the Act 57 tax resolution.
So moved.
Second.
On the motion?
Dr. Schaefer, could you give a quick understanding of what this is?
If I can phone a friend.
When I do that, okay, I'll take care of this one. So this is actually a common sense piece of legislation that was passed in 2022 that aids taxpayers who bought new homes in the district or anywhere in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Oftentimes, the county doesn't update their records in time for the tax bill to go out correctly. So a lot of times what we have is new homeowners who move to the district, the old homeowner gets the bill in the mail, it gets forwarded to them, they never receive it, they don't get a chance to pay it, then it goes over to penalty. This gives us the authority to waive the penalty. It provides a system to do that. It's very common sense, and we shouldn't be penalizing our new residents that didn't have a shot at it, so.
Thanks for that explanation.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Karam?
Yes.
Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Robeson?
Yes.
Mrs. Tierney?
Yes.
Mr. Abdullah?
Yes.
Mr. Azar?
Yes.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes.
Mrs. Hillebrand?
Yes.
Mr. Acker?
Yes.
9-0.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Amazing. We got through that in an orderly fashion. Next is listed informational use of our facilities.
Can I comment on one of those, please? The Abington Heights girls track and field, they are using the gym at the high school to celebrate their 100th win in April. So let's hope it's consecutive girls' 100th win. So I just had to put a shout out to the girls. This is an incredible thing for the Abington Heights girls track team. So hopefully the meet that they have that afternoon, which is against Scranton Prep, they succeed and they have their 100th win.
Good. I see girls on the run is also listed, Mrs. Henderson.
6 sites.
Is there any unfinished business? Is there any new business? Ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you all.
Hold on. We're not, we're still online, Joe.
Yeah.
I have to touch a red button. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on, nobody talk. He said, it's the circle red.
So when you go to talk, unless it's not plugged in, but you're fine. You had it fine.